had television, radio, print, outdoor and direct, and it wasn't hard to reach an audience, because if you took an ad on TV1 or Channel 1 as it was then, and ad in the listener, you reached everyone in the country who wasn't in a coma. So it wasn't hard. Now you've got 100 television channels, 123 radio stations, 400 magazines, plus all the social networks. It's just, the audiences are fragmented.
We used a shotgun and now we have to use a rifle. I mean, there's a much greater emphasis now on not so much the quantity of the audience, but more the quality of the audience.
Not everyone's watching the one you want to advertise on. So therefore demographics have become very, very important.
It's getting even more sophisticated, but it's actually getting a lot easier to get to specific targets.
We've gone from a business of one size fits all to one size fits one. So you need, if you understand who your customers are, you can actually reach them individually, and you've got to decide then, is that market big enough to justify chasing?
I mean, I think one of the biggest audiences now is probably 55 to 75.
There's over 1 million baby boomers, and they're all with high disposable income.
So we're coming to the end of the baby boomers turning 50, but obviously we have that wave of people, and now their children coming through who are actually sort of 45.
They bred quite young, and they had anything from 2 to 4 to 6 children, quite big families. So we've got this double bubble of not only the baby boomers, but the children of baby boomers, and the children of baby boomers begin turning 45 in 2014.
It's interesting that the 35 to 65 age group is the biggest user of social media. We tend to forget that.
You know, you see people in their 60s and 70s with iPads and things, and they're quite happy about it.
The older people become younger, you know, relative to the whole pattern. So I'm 76. I don't consider myself old at all, which, you know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and certainly 40, 50 years ago would have been a preposterous statement. So intellectually and mentally, I'm much younger than my age.
Yeah, my doctor said to me that there's when you get to age 60, you've quite possibly got as many adult years ahead of you as you've already had. Because it won't be unusual for baby boomers to live till they're in their 90s or to get to be 100.
We've been taught to look after ourselves. We've been taught about fitness. We've done all those things. And hence a person of 60, 65, my age 67, is a lot younger in their body and thinking and what they do than perhaps my father and his father was.
I think retirement at age 65, or even certainly at age 60, is a joke. It might have been 100 years ago when you were working down the mines and your body was buggered, but now people work in cities. They're perfectly healthy at age 60 and 65.
You come to 60 or 65 and you're thinking about retiring and you don't feel like it.
I'll never retire. I mean, I might change from being, and I will change from being full-time running an advertising agency, but I'm not going to retire. I'm certainly not going to retire from work, and I'm not going to retire from life.
And what happened? And what are you going to do if you retire at 60 or 65? Wander around the supermarket pushing a trolley behind your wife for the next 40 years? You can't play golf every day. Well, I suppose you could, but you're going to be bored. You can't go fishing every day. There's no one to play with. And so I think the people will just keep on working and having a meaningful life.
50 plus have the biggest disposable income than any other generation. And with the number of baby boomers that are moving into that sector, like 2014 is the last baby boomer will be 50 plus. Now that's over 1 million baby boomers who are in that 50 plus zone. Your disposable income is at the highest it's ever going to be.
There's plenty of money there. There's plenty of money washing around. I mean, if you go to a Westfield supermarket, a Westfield shopping centre in the weekend, and you look at the people who are wandering around there, and obviously kind of not quite impulse shoppers, but with money in their pocket and deciding what they're going to do, a lot of them are in their 50s, 60s and beyond.
They have got 2.5 times more disposable income than Gen Y and Gen X. So that gives you an idea of how much more they are worth chasing.
I'm a good example of this myself. I have a lot more money now than I had when I was in my 20s, 30s, 40s, or even 50s. I have a lot of disposable income, and most of my friends have a lot of disposable income, and we do things like We buy things that once upon a time we wouldn't have bought. We like to have a very nice car. We like to take holidays and go overseas, all these sorts of things.
And not only that, the factor that a lot of people haven't even thought about is that that group are around the recipients of inheritances, which are that's going to equate to the biggest wealth transfer ever in history.
It's the want, not need generation, and I think you're right. They've saved up, they've paid off their mortgage, they get to that point, they're earning the most, kids are left home, their time, so they spend.
So you've got to tailor your product or tailor your message to your particular audience. And I think that advertisers are missing out on a whole cohort of baby boomers, because the people who drive the advertising messages are 23-year-olds. They don't know that another category exists.
A lot of the people making decisions at the top end, business decisions and that, are in that 50-plus zone, but then in the marketing side, they're generally quite a bit younger. And then you flip that into the advertising agency, and the creatives and that are all in, you know, below 30 or definitely below 35. And it's not really cool to focus on 50 plus.
So their worldview is around about their age. It takes a paradigm shift in your mind to actually start thinking beyond who you are.
We just recently did another ad agency round and sat down in front of all these people, and I guess I'm getting older and they're getting younger. And you know, we're coming across people who are mid-20s who are making decisions for these brands who, you know, to be honest, just can't get past the fact that they don't get briefs for people over 49.
It seems to me, if you look at people's lives, people get married probably around 25, 30. And most people in New Zealand, as we now know to be the case, are very interested in owning a house, having a property and so on. So these are people who have got very high expenditure on things like mortgages. And I would have thought not a lot of disposable income. So it doesn't make sense to me that you would pick this very group of people as the people you would direct your advertising to, the 18 to 49-year-olds.
They see it as uncool to start with, but they think they're going to marginalise their business because it is uncool.
We go back and we say, well, you know, what are your parents doing on a daily basis? You know, what age are they and what are your grandparents doing? And we just try and gradually change their minds as to, hey, this is a big demographic that you need to be speaking with.
So the emphasis has always been sort of get them young and hopefully keep them till they grow up.
They take the loyalty for granted. So it's as if you buy a brand, you're always going to buy that brand, but we know with our research that that's definitely not the case. You need to keep speaking with the audience.
They don't know, you know, they don't know how to reach them. They don't know, and a lot of media buyers and ad agencies are 23 to 30-year-old young females who don't understand necessarily, you know, how to reach that particular demographic. And I think that advertisers generally are missing out on a trick by not understanding what this big cohort of quite wealthy baby boomers is actually doing.
It used to be that, you know, the banks would always say that the kids, if you could get the parents, then the kids would be very likely to open a bank account with the ASB if mum and dad had always banked with ASB.
We're getting banks advertising with us for KiwiSaver in order to really get to the grandchildren. So some of these industries and categories are identifying that, hey, we need to speak with this audience to actually get to other audiences.
We created generational campaigns to aim at an older audience. Because that 50 plus, especially women, it's their time. They had Outward Bound on their bucket list, but they didn't think they could do it. We actually changed their whole product mix so that this audience became up to 20% of their business. But what was really interesting is that because we targeted the old audience, we actually lifted their youth courses as well, because we were talking to the same audience that if it wasn't right, Outward Bound wasn't right for them, they could see it was right for their children.
We have that split family, whereas in other cultures you might have granny or mum or dad coming to live with you in their old age. In our culture, in our society, you know, very often they'll now move into a retirement village or a home. So it's enormous influence. Between
50 and 59 is the most influential stage of their lives, because they have got a close association with their children, and they are helping them with financial affairs and first mortgage. But also if they've got grandchildren, they influence them there. their peers as well, and also they're looking after their parents as well. So it's quite a interesting dynamic, that 50 plus zone.
You go to Harvey Norman and it's the people 50 plus who are dragging the flat screen TVs out the door and ordering the new washing machine and everything, because they've got the money.
Well, what we know is that when we do promote, whether it's a car brand or whether it is travel and health and supplements and keeping fit and those sorts of things, the brands do really well.
The group that has picked up on this best of all, in my opinion, is the travel industry, who actually even now have specialised companies that specialise in 45 plus or 50 plus travel. That's all they do.
I know Air New Zealand do very well. I have, and I think they are, because they're driving. One is they've actually resegmented their product based on young audiences that want just walk on with a bag, so they're going for that lower end. But then they've actually expanded on quality and comfort at the other end. So not only can you get sky couches, things like that. So they've actually done very well identifying what the different needs are for people at different life stages.
I noticed the latest, remember Betty, the woman out of Golden Girls, who's just starring in the latest Air New Zealand in-flight video, the old lady who, yeah, I mean, that's a classic example of someone using an old person, because she's must be in her 70s, for an in-flight video with a bit of humour, and she's acting very youthfully, and people are looking at it and going, hey, you know, that's funny, it's interesting. That sort of stuff I think is going to become a bit more prevalent, where you see older people but acting in quite a young and youthful and interesting way. They
know when you're not talking to them, and so they'll go to brands that they can relate to. So if your brand can relate to that, then you can actually grab quite a bit of share, because, for instance, in the new cars, 60%, and it's probably higher now, but 60% of new cars are bought by people 50 plus. The wine industry, 2 out of 3 baby boomers, so they drink wine most days of the week, but they never target it, you know. So there's opportunities for companies if they were to start focusing on this audience.
The youth has been the focus for probably, I don't know, the last 50 years. I think however, the population ages, you can't escape the fact that there's a very valuable audience there. Now, how you talk to them, I think, is quite critical. You can't be patronising, and you can't pretend that they're kind of becoming, you know, old and doddery and don't know their own minds. And you have to be, I think, sensitive about the way in which you talk to them. But if you get it right, you can open up a really rich seam of consumers who've got money to spend, and hopefully will spend it with you.